All right, welcome. Welcome. It's 12:01 p.m. Eastern Time right now, and I am excited to be back doing another live here with you all. Today, I really want to talk about how to save your marriage from divorce. This is one of the things that is one of the most painful places that couples can find themselves in. Maybe you've had conversations about separation, or maybe one partner has mentioned divorce. And a lot of people, when divorce starts getting mentioned, they start wondering, is our relationship something that can survive? Is our relationship something that can that we can repair, that we can sort of like fix to make sure that we can stay together, but not just stay together where we are happy and fulfilled together in the relationship. So if that's where you are, I want you to know that many couples arrive to couples counseling feeling hopeless. But the really good news is that the couples who often recover aren't necessarily the couples that have the fewest problems. So there are a lot of couples that come into couples counseling. They have tons and tons of problems. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to end up divorced. There are it's the couples who begin to understand what's actually happening underneath their conflict. Those are the couples that tend to be the ones who are successfully rebuilding their connection. And this is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about how to successfully rebuild that connection, um, and look at the ways that couples are stuck. So, hopefully, you will leave here with a little bit more hope if that is something that is impacting you. And and yes, that's the goal. So, hi, I'm Dr. Elizabeth Polinsky. I go by Liz. I am the owner and founder of Communicate and Connect Counseling. And I'm very excited to be here with you all today. Now, I am still making sure that I'm getting all of my um, all of my tech sorted out to do lives, and getting used to doing that. So I apologize if I'm a little scattered trying to figure that out. Okay, so um, I want to just talk a little bit about the problem that a lot of couples face, because it's one of the biggest challenges I see with couples before divorce. It's not necessarily the amount of conflict, but it's the loss of hope. When couples reach a point where they stop reaching for each other, they stop sharing what's going on with them, they stop being vulnerable, and they stop believing that things can change. Once hope is starts disappearing, the relationship can really begin to feel like it's beyond repair. And this is the thing that I really see happening before couples get divorced, is they go to this place where they're in a lot of hopelessness. But what I'm wanting you to take away, what I'm wanting you to know, is that hopelessness is not always proof that the relationship itself is hopeless. Very often, the feeling of hopelessness is a symptom. It's a symptom of being trapped in a really powerful negative cycle, and having been trapped there for far too long, that you and your partner have just been stuck in a relationship cycle going on and on and on and on. That is really what hopelessness is a sign of. And so when couples who don't understand that they are in a relationship pattern, or that they're stuck in a cycle or a spiral, they start to begin thinking that the pain that they're experiencing is evidence that the marriage can't recover, that the marriage is broken, that um, that it's not possible anymore to be together. But when they can start to see the cycle more clearly, that is really when something starts to shift because hope can start to return. Like when you understand what is actually happening in your relationship, that is like the that is the huge turning point to start feeling hopeful and like you guys can do something about it together. And so, if you are watching this live right now, I think that there is a way that you can submit a comment and I will see it. Still learning how to do that, but go ahead and give it a try, and I will try to respond live in real time to any questions or comments that come in. But you might also just be watching this recording. And so it might be helpful to think about, uh, how have you ever felt like the most painful part? Like if you just think about your relationship, maybe it's your relationship with your partner, since that's really what we're talking about today. But you can think about a relationship with a past partner or another significant relationship in your life. Just thinking about what was the most painful part of that. Because for many people, it's not one specific fight, but it is kind of the feeling that nothing is ever going to change. And so I'm just wanting you to think about have there been other places in your life where the most painful part wasn't necessarily this one instance that happened, but this kind of like repeated pattern of feeling like nothing was ever going to change or improve. Okay, because that's very common. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Ooh, I want to be able to see everything. Okay, get my cursor out of the way. So, when relationships are struggling, couples often focus on the very visible problems. And this is actually one of the biggest mistakes that people make is that they focus on just the visible problems. So that might be communication. They feel like we're not communicating the way that we think we should be, or that we want to be. They may be focused on trying to find solutions to parenting, especially if they have different thoughts about how parenting should go or how discipline should go or the different values that they want to instill in their kids. They may be focused a lot on sex and intimacy as well. There might be conversations about how frequently we're having sex, or maybe we're not having sex as frequently as we would want to, or as one partner would want to, or maybe the conversation turns into more of kind of like the quality of sex. Like you're not really as present as I want you to be. We're not really having emotional connection during intimacy, or it might get into lots of problem solving about like having variety. So communication, parenting, sex, these are really common ones. Other ones that I see a lot with couples is money. Money can be a big topic. Maybe conversations then start becoming around how someone should budget better or watch their spending more. It can also be household responsibilities that come up in the division of labor between partners. And I want to be really clear, like all of these issues matter. Communication, parenting, sex, money, household chores, like all of that really matters. But many couples spend years trying to solve these problems without actually addressing the deeper cycle that is driving those problems to begin with. I had one mentor who said, like, in what we do in emotionally focused therapy and our spiral to team process is we are helping people work on the problem that makes solving all the other problems a problem. So if you are having a problem solving these things, it's because typically there's a deeper cycle driving them. And so often when people are focused on, let's fix and find solutions to these different issues, they they might learn communication skills, and they might make lots of agreements. We're going to do better next time. You're going to do this, and I'm going to do this, and we're going to try to do this sort of script in communication. There may be lots of promises to try harder, but they continue to feel disconnected. Okay, and so why is this? It's because the cycle remains unchanged, the underlying cycle. And that is what I'm going to talk a little bit with you about next. Okay. So this is a new way that I want you to think about this, because there may not be anything wrong with your relationship. The relationship is not necessarily broken. It's that the cycle is probably winning. So, in emotionally focused therapy, we pay really close attention to the negative cycle that takes over between partners. Couples often come into the first consult, the first few sessions of couples therapy, and they may come in believing, it's my partner. It's my partner that's the problem. I'm totally fine. There's nothing wrong with me. Or they might be saying, I think our relationship is broken. It's so much damage has happened. It's too much. It's beyond repair. Or maybe we're just incompatible. These are a lot of the things that go through people's minds when they're first coming into counseling. But what I typically see is that the underlying cycle between them has actually gotten stronger and so pervasive. Then it's almost like the cycle has become stronger than the people inside it. So one partner gets scared, and then when they get scared of disconnection, of losing the other one in the relationship, they try to reach for their partner, but they do it in such a way that they're very critical, or they put a lot of pressure on their partner. And it sort of comes from this place of panic. Like one person starts to panic, and then they're floundering. I'm just thinking about this metaphor of when someone is drowning and you're supposed to throw them the life raft because they are kind of moving their arms and legs, and they're in a panic. And if you go over to help them, they'll like push you under the water, and they might elbow you, and they could really hurt you because they're in such a panic. And this is often what's happening with one partner. One partner is in a panic and then starts with the criticism, in the panic, trying to fix things. But then the other person starts to get overwhelmed by the panic and the criticism that's coming their way. And then they protect themselves by shutting down or pulling away. And then both people feel even more alone. They feel more disconnected. And the more this pattern repeats, this cycle or spiral, the more hopeless the relationship feels. This is really what causes that hopeless feeling in couples. So really the very first thing is to see the cycle. Because when couples can identify that they're caught in this loop together, they often begin to see that there's still something to work with, that the enemy is not each other. The enemy is the pattern that keeps taking over. And so this is the realization that I'm hoping you're taking from this, because it's that first moment of hope that comes back into the room. Like when couples come in and they are feeling absolutely hopeless, and they're thinking, there's no way our relationship isn't just headed for divorce. Like this is the big first turning point, the very first turning point, when they start to feel hopeful again, when they can see, oh, this is what's happening. We are caught in this cycle together. Okay, I gotta go to my next slide here. Okay, so I have a couple of teaching points that I want to cover. And the first one is that divorce is often preceded by disconnection, not a lack of love. And I think this is a common misconception because many people think that if we loved each other, this wouldn't be happening. And in some ways, it's happening exactly because you love each other. But I'll save that for another time. It's because I love you that I'm afraid of losing you, and then my panic starts, and I go into criticism. But let me stay on track here. Let me keep my brain on track. Okay. So divorce is often preceded by disconnection, not necessarily a lack of love. Many couples who are considering divorce still really love each other, and that can be pretty confusing because they might be thinking, if we still love each other, then why is this happening? Why does it feel so impossible to be together? And the answer to that is that often love has sort of become buried. It's buried underneath years of hurt. It's buried underneath fear, underneath resentment, could be buried underneath disappointment, and beneath all the ways each of you have learned to protect yourselves. When emotional disconnection becomes chronic, then people stop risking vulnerably. It's like I don't show you my heart anymore. I start protecting myself and I don't show you my heart because this pattern that we're in is so painful. And then when I don't show you my heart, you have no idea all the love that's in there. And so you have no idea. You go into protecting yourself. And then when you protect yourself and stop sharing vulnerably, I have no idea all the love that's in there. And this is how people start thinking, I don't even know if my partner loves me anymore, when usually they love each other a whole lot. It's just very scary to be vulnerable when things have been so painful for such a long time. And so when this has been going on a long time, they stop turning towards each other. They may still care really deeply, but the relationship just doesn't feel emotionally safe to be vulnerable. And so the goal is not simply, do we still love each other? That's not really the question to be asking because most people absolutely still love each other. Really, the deeper question to ask is, can we find our way back to being connected? Can we find a way back to being connected that allows us to feel emotionally safe again and allows us to be vulnerable and share our hearts with our partner? Okay, next slide. Okay, teaching point number 2. When we feel unsafe, we protect ourselves. So I started to talk a little bit about this in the last slide, but I want to expand on it here because when that cycle has been going on and it's been painful, and maybe there are feelings of like, am I being rejected? Am I not accepted for who I am? Am I just not good enough? Am I not a priority? Like, ugh, all those things, they hurt. And so when that hurt gets triggered on the inside, we go into protecting ourselves. And those protections really make sense. And that protection, that could look like criticism. No, I'm not the problem, you're the problem. That hurts too much to think that you think I'm the problem. So I'm going to tell you that you're the problem. And I start criticizing you. Defensiveness is a bit this way as well. That then when one person says, okay, you're the problem, I'm not the problem, you're the problem, the other one goes, wait, I'm not the problem, you're the problem. And they get caught in a loop of just pointing fingers at each other. Criticize, defend, defend, criticize back, and that goes around. Another common way that we can protect ourselves is with withdrawal and sort of avoidance, where we shut down, We don't bring up conversations, we keep a lot of things to ourselves, we try to sweep them under the rug. Um, or we might go into just try to say the right thing, the thing that's going to keep the peace and not rock the boat. But this can be a challenge as well, because then we're not really communicating and we're not working through anything. And so as things get kind of swept under the rug and they're not talked about, they can bubble and fester on the inside, and they can also end up to where we've spent so much time not talking to each other that we're just roommates now. There's no connection there because it's too scary to talk about anything that we've talked about nothing, and then there's like nothing between us anymore. So in EFT, one of the really common cycles that can happen that we see is something called a pursue withdraw pattern. So someone maybe is afraid of divorce, is fearing abandonment, and that divorce is going to happen. And so then they try harder to fix things. But when they try harder to fix things, it's just coming out on the outside as criticism. And then when the other partner hears the criticism, they're really afraid of failing. They also don't want to get divorced. They don't want to do things wrong and fail their partner, and so then they shut down, trying not to make anything else worse. They're like, "Oh God, this is not going well. Let me just shut down and not make the situation worse." But when they shut down, the person who's afraid of abandonment is saying, "Oh my gosh, you're not here with me." And so then they get more critical and they push harder. "Why don't you just talk to me? Come on, you're not even talking now." And then that person goes, "Oh my gosh, I am somehow failing by trying to just not make anything worse." And then the disconnection grows. Both of them are protecting themselves. Neither are sharing their deep hearts with each other, and the disconnection grows. And so this is really what we see with a pursue withdraw cycle, that example. It could also be maybe someone feels unimportant and they become critical, and then their partner feels overwhelmed and shuts down. But I think the takeaway here is that neither person is trying to destroy the relationship. Neither person doesn't love the other one. Both are just trying to survive emotionally and trying to get through that moment of disconnection emotionally. But the more each of them are protecting themselves, the more unsafe the relationship feels to their partner. So then the pursuer often feels ignored and abandoned, and the withdrawer feels criticized or inadequate. And then the cycle intensifies. And over time, that cycle can make both people start to believe that there is no hope. But again, I want you to take this. Hopelessness is often the effect of having a cycle. It's not the truth about the marriage. Okay, let me go to my next slide here. That's about what I wanted to share there. Okay, so hope really returns when people can see the cycle and start changing the cycle. And that leads to more connection, and the connection creates hope. So this is an emotional turning point, because a lot of people, they wait to feel hopeful before they try again to repair the marriage. But that is not how it works. Often, hope does not come first. Hope grows when something new happens between partners. And so when one person shares their hurt instead of their criticism, and the other person can stay present instead of shutting down, this starts to build hope, because we're changing our cycle. We're doing something different together. When one person can reach with vulnerability and the other one can respond with care, this is a new emotional experience. It's like building a new cycle together. So we are interrupting the old cycle, starting to build hope, and then starting to actually create a whole new cycle. And when the cycle changes, even if it's slightly, that's when couples start to begin to feel like, okay, maybe we're not as hopeless as we thought. And I want you to know, like, hope is not something that you can simply wait for. Hope is something that grows. Hope grows as safety and connection begin returning. And of course, the goal is not to have a perfect relationship. Nobody has a perfect relationship. Every single couple has a cycle of some kind that they're learning to work through together. But the goal is to have a relationship, to build a relationship where the cycle is no longer the final word. The cycle does not get to decide whether or not your relationship is hopeless. So, I want to share a story next about a couple, Sarah and Mike. Sometimes the stories are helpful for people to just make it a little bit more personal. And of course, de-identified, protecting all sorts of actual client information. But okay, so Sarah and Mike came in feeling pretty discouraged about their relationship. I think deep down, Sarah felt really alone, kind of like emotionally abandoned, like their partner wasn't ever there for them. On the other side, Mike was in this place where he just felt like he could never get anything right. And he would try and he would try, but then it would feel like I'm not getting it right. And then when Sarah would feel alone without him, she would push. She would push, she'd make suggestions about what he could do. She'd say, "Did you even try today? Like here's how to do it. No, that's not right. Do it this way." And she would kind of critique Mike. And seemed like Mike tried for a long time to do it all just right, and then eventually felt like there's no way I can do it right, and he would shut down and withdraw. And sometimes that would look like making a lot of promises, like, yeah, I'm gonna do it better next time. And sometimes that looked like just going into the other room, like, I can't talk about this right now. And walking away. But the more Sarah would kind of like push and say, like, no, we need to have a solution to this. I think you should do it this way. The more Mike would kind of get overwhelmed with all the critiques, go into feeling like he wasn't ever going to be good enough for her, and then he would withdraw. But then the more he would withdraw, the more Sarah would start to feel panicked, like, oh my gosh, am I alone in this? Are you going to be a team member with me? And then she would get escalated and get more critical. And then eventually they began talking about divorce. And the hopelessness really developed because the cycle kept repeating and neither of them understood what was happening. Sarah thought that Mike just didn't care, and Mike sort of thought that Sarah could never be satisfied. And really, they were both hurting, but the cycle made each of them look like the partner was the enemy. So they kept thinking like, oh, this is my partner. My partner, Mike doesn't care. Sarah can't ever be satisfied. The cycle like points the finger at the partner. But what started to change was that they started to understand what was happening, because they started to begin to see their pattern, their relationship pattern. And Sarah could start recognizing that she did get critical when she was lonely, that she was lonely. She wanted support from Mike, and that when she wanted that, she would get critical and critique and point out how he wasn't doing things good enough or she wanted more from him. When she started to recognize her part, that made a big difference. But Mike also started recognizing his part, that his withdrawal was often his way of protecting against feeling like a failure, against feeling like I can never do it good enough, and then going to like, let me not even try because it's going to be so hard if I try again and I just hear again that I'm failing you. And so as they understood the cycle and how each of them um, were kind of contributing with their protections, then they could start to reach for each other in a different way because they could start dropping the protection and reaching with vulnerability. And that this is really the exit ramp for people. But as they understood like the pathway that was leading to disconnection, they could then start understanding and work towards creating the path that leads to connection. And as that connection returned, the hope returned as well. So it really does sort of go, there's disconnection, then we protect ourselves. The cycle spins around a whole bunch. Then we start feeling hopeless because the cycle keeps going. But the turning point is understanding the cycle. And as we understand the cycle, that can lead to more connection, especially as we understand it, then we can change it and we can have moments that lead to connection again. Okay, so here are the key takeaways. Key takeaway number 1, hopelessness does not mean that your relationship is actually hopeless. So if you remember nothing else from today's training, this is the one. Hopelessness and hopeless are not the same thing. Hopelessness is a feeling, and it's an important feeling, and we want to have some compassion for that feeling, but it's not an accurate diagnosis of the relationship. Many couples who feel hopeless are not dealing with a hopeless marriage. They're dealing with a very powerful negative cycle that has gone on and unnamed and ununderstood for a really long time. Most couples are not actually fighting each other. They're fighting a pattern. This is takeaway number 2. Takeaway number 3, when we protect ourselves, that creates more distance. And then as we are trying to understand our pattern and change our pattern, that leads to more connection. Connection is what brings hope again. And so when couples can start to understand the cycle in their relationship, create new emotional experiences together, that's when change becomes possible. It does not mean that every relationship is simple or easy to repair, because actually doing this is quite hard. This is the first step, and oftentimes it can be more simple than what people often come in thinking that change is going to require. But it can be emotionally hard work to risk dropping my protection. But there is hope. It does not mean that the feeling of it just because it can be, sorry, let me collect my thoughts here. What I'm trying to say is just because it can be emotionally tough to be vulnerable, to drop my protection, it doesn't mean that the relationship is hopeless. It's not the same thing as being without hope. There's actually a whole lot of hope that can be had. This is something that couples are changing every single day. I see people working really hard to change this every single day. I've changed it myself in my own marriage, going through our negative cycle, recognizing the cycle, us both working together. I've helped tons of couples do this. There absolutely is hope, even if it is feeling hopeless right now. Okay, and let's see here. So if today's conversation kind of resonated with you, really the next step is to understand your specific relationship pattern, because there are a few different ones. There are some common ones, and that is why I created a relationship pattern assessment. This helps you start to identify the cycle that might be keeping you stuck and provides some insight into what might be happening underneath the cycle and underneath the conflict. So let me just make sure you have that. Here is the QR code. So it's totally free. You can take that. It should help you start seeing what relationship pattern you might be stuck in. And that is the very first step. Because once you can see it, then you can start working with it and changing it. There's a really common phrase in the therapy world where people say, "Name it to tame it." In this instance, they usually are talking about like emotions. Name your emotion to tame your emotion, and maybe that's a topic for another day. Whether you should actually be trying to tame your emotions, but in this instance, I think it really applies to this cycle and this pattern. Once you can name your cycle and the two of you are in a really good spot to start taming it and to work together to actually be feeling like a team and to feel that connection again. Okay. And then if this was helpful for you, what would be really helpful for me is if you'd be willing to leave a Google review. We, as therapists, we don't ask our clients to leave Google reviews just to protect their confidentiality. And so we really get a lot of reviews from kind of like the community workshops and the support, the more kind of like free support that's educational support outside of counseling. And so if you found this at all helpful, I would very much appreciate you leaving a Google review. Of course, like 5 stars is what helps us the most. And you can use the QR code on the screen there, to do that. And that just helps more people get connected to us and have a sense of how we can help them. So now I'm going to go to some Q&A, and I'm going to check and see. Again, I'm still kind of learning my system to see if anyone has left chats or like a comment for me to see if I can answer some of them live. But I also have some common questions that I get asked, and I'll go ahead and I think I'll stop my screen share here. That way, you can just see me fully. I haven't had to do this yet. Okay, stop sharing. Okay, now you just see me. Okay, great. Yeah, just so you see me while we're doing this kind of Q&A. So I had prepared a couple of common questions that I get asked while I'm waiting to see if we have anybody who has kind of a live question that they want to drop down. Okay, one common question that I get is, how do I know if my marriage can still be saved? Okay, this is really if both of you want to save it. I have had couples on a huge spectrum in my practice. I've had couples who came in with like decades of affairs and cheating on both sides, where they just were kind of like revenge cheating on each other, but they wanted to work on their marriage. They were like, we're not getting divorced. We are here to fight for this. We want to improve this. I have also had couples who came in after getting married, and one person decided, actually, I am not ready to be married. I got into this too fast. It's not for me. No clear problems that were going on. They reported that the relationship was great. They just said, yeah, this is not what I want. anymore. I think that I agreed to this too quickly, and so they ended their relationship. So um, for me, the way that I know if there is hope for a marriage, if there's a chance that it can be saved, is if both people want to work on it. If one person doesn't want to work on it, that is the really hard part that we have to then come to accept, is that it does take two people to work on it. Okay, um, so this brings me to my second question. What if only one partner wants to work on the relationship? Okay, this is a little bit two separate things. Is your partner saying that they're totally done and they want a divorce and they're completely done? You know, if they are completely done and they're saying, "I am not doing a single thing to work on this," then that is something we have to respect their right to choose that for themselves, which I know is incredibly painful. But most of the time, what I actually see when people are asking this question, it's like my partner isn't willing to come to couples counseling. Not that they don't want to work on the relationship. They are willing to work on the relationship in terms of doing date nights or in terms of working on communication skills together or in terms of other at home exercises. They just aren't willing to go to couples counseling. And so, if only one partner is wanting to go to couples counseling and work on improving the relationship, this is where individual counseling for relationship concerns can be really helpful. We have also a type of therapy called emotionally focused individual therapy. We still use the same spiral to team process, but what we do in that is that we look at, okay, how are you as an individual creating, not creating, but contributing to the cycle in your relationship. So we would still look at trying to understand what the cycle might be. Granted, it's only from one person's perspective, so it's, maybe not 100% accurate, but we're going to do our best to understand what the couple cycle might be, what you are doing to protect yourself that might be adding to the cycle, how you can start dropping your protections and to share what's underneath. And when you change your part, that also helps there be a chance to change the entire cycle and the entire pattern. So that is something that you absolutely can work on if your partner, you can work on that in individual counseling if your partner is not open to couples counseling. Another common question I get is, can emotional safety be rebuilt after years of conflict? And the answer is yes. Yeah, it can be. Again, if both of you are willing to work on the relationship and willing to build it. It might take longer because you have more hurts. You have more buildup of hurts over time, and it might be feeling really hard and really risky, but it is absolutely possible. Okay. And sometimes I get also the question, what about in the cases where trust has been broken? Is there hope for the relationship if trust has been broken? And yes, I absolutely think that there is. And in fact, we do know from the research that most couples, after there has been like an infidelity, cheating of some kind, or some big betrayal like that, most couples actually stay together and do not get divorced or break up. And so we know that a lot of people do stay in their relationships after trust has been broken. And of course, oh, I'm just getting a notification that I only have 14 minutes, so I will be wrapping it up. What I was trying to say though is that yes, it can be addressed, and we can work on rebuilding trust and really healing some of the hurt places that are coming up as a result of the broken trust. Um, okay. So I am also aware that I am about to run out of time. And so I'm probably going to save some of these questions for another time. But thank you all who are attending live. Thank you to those who are watching the recording. My hope is that this does help you, and that you take something from this that will help you with your relationship as you are moving forward together. Okay, I will hopefully see you guys at the next one.